Well, good morning, or I should say good afternoon, Ulster University students, Ulster colleagues and friends. My name is Glenda Martin, and I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's Future Skills Week session, Confidence in Action. We're delighted to have Northern Ireland's best known motivational speaker with us this afternoon, Mr. Billy Dixon. Billy, you are very welcome. For those of you who have already heard Billy before, I expect that that may be one of the reasons that you've tuned into this session. For those of you who have not yet had the opportunity to attend one of the sessions, I will guarantee that you will be inspired and you will be searching the website for his other sessions during this Future Skills Week of activities. So just a quick reminder, please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions throughout the session or to make comments. If you want to ask Billy a question verbally, please use the little raise hand function at the bottom of this screen. And Billy will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible during our hour together. And finally, this session will be recorded and it will be made available on the Future Skills Week website later this week. But before we kick off, I just want to respectfully remind you that we are in a professional virtual environment and ask that, if not already done so, please mute your microphone. So, Billy, thank you so much for joining us again here at Ulster. You're very welcome, and I will now pass over to you.
Well, thank you, Glenda, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here today. I had a really interesting meeting this week. I met this man academically and intellectually in a league of his own, way above anything I could aspire to. But the interesting thing was, when he was at primary school, the headmaster of a school said he was really ugly. And to this day, this man, who is now in his late 50s, sits with his hand in front of his face like this here when he's talking to other people. He has never ever reached the potential that he could have. In fact, he ended up working in a factory and refused promotion simply because of the effect that those comments had on him in his early life. You see, this is where confidence comes from. Confidence comes from our past. We're not born with it. It's something that is developed, something that we have good days and we have bad days in it. And it's something that's close to my heart, because whenever I was at school, I was told I was thick and stupid and would never aspire to anything. And even after 22 years of lecturing, I left that job still believing I was thick and stupid. Now, I have to say I no longer believe that. I'm not a genius, but I'm not thick and stupid either. And that's really what I want to talk today about. How can you develop confidence even when you don't feel it? How can you fake it? How can you communicate more effectively in a confident manner? And if you're doing presentations, how can you present and appear to be more confident? The one thing that people don't realize is you may not feel confident, but everybody who's watching this today actually has confidence. And there's a thing called focused confidence. Now, what that actually means, it means we're very confident with certain people. We're very confident doing certain things. We're very confident in certain environments. But take us away from those and then our confidence goes. And this is called focused confidence. That's the technical term, and it's something that everybody has. Now, that on one hand is very good, but on the other hand can be very limiting. Because what happens, because we have this confidence in these areas, people retreat and tend not to come out of those areas, and they live inside this bubble called a comfort zone. And the one thing I will say to everybody today is, please, please, no matter what else you do, always step outside your comfort zone. Because if you don't, you will not progress, you will not develop, your confidence will not grow. Now, whenever I was lecturing, some of you may have heard this story before, but whenever I was lecturing, I was also a skydive instructor. And every year what I would do, I'd take a group of students up and let them jump out of an aircraft. And this one year, I took this fella called Bill. And Bill academically really struggled. But he had a personality to die for. He was one of these people everybody just warmed to. In fact, his personality was infectious. Excuse me, by the way, my voice doesn't always sound like this. Yesterday I had no voice at all. Anyway, so Bill decided he wanted to jump out of the airplane. Now the thing was, Bill had never flown before, and the first time he's going to fly, he's going to jump out of it. We're at 1,500 feet. I'm hanging out the aircraft deciding where the jump is going to take place from. And all I can hear in the background among the 5 jumpers that are with me in the plane is this crying. And I look over and it's little Bill, and he's crying. And I says to Bill, "Are you all right?" He couldn't even answer. He just blubbered. So we fly up to 3,500 feet where we're going to jump from. And he's cried that much that the front of his jumpsuit here is totally sodden with tears. And I said to Bill, "Bill, are you all right?" And Bill says to me, "Oh, sir, I'm really sorry. I can't do this. I won't be able to jump." I says, "That's all right, Bill. We'll take you down in the plane." Now, I'm lying through my teeth because he's gone out. Nobody comes down in the plane. So I get the other 4 people out, no problem. And now it's Bill's turn. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to do a bit of wrestling to get this boy out. So I says to Bill, trying to get him relaxed, "Do you want to come down the plane with me?" And Bill, to my surprise, says, "Oh, sir, I'll give it a go, sir." So I says, "Good man, feet out." And he shuffles across the floor of the plane on his bum, puts his feet and takes up the perfect exit position. He's looking in at me with this little pale face and this big helmet, and he's still crying. And I say, "Bill goes." And Bill jumps, and he's still crying. I followed him out. Whenever I land on the pitch beside him, wee Bill's like, sir, that was brilliant. Can I do that again?" We put him on the next plane up. 1.5 years later, Bill plus 2 American guys won the freestyle freefall championship of the world over in Arizona. He had a talent I'd never seen before in freefall. He was doing things in a month that took me years to master. He just was sensational. A few years ago, I met him on the way over to Edinburgh, and he said that one day changed his life because he was forced outside his comfort zone. He realized that inside he had an awful lot more to give. And today he's the chief executive of one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Now, I'm not suggesting that you jump out of a plane to find out what you're good at, but please step outside your comfort zone. I think it's crucial. A couple of things. I was reading recently that talent is limited to a certain number of people. A very, very small percentage of people have actually talent. And yet, last night I was watching Country File, and Matt says whenever people were planting things, everybody was finding their particular talent. Everyone has a talent. I don't know if this is true or not, but academics are now saying no. They're saying as few as 2% of the world's population actually have talent. Is it true? I'm not sure. I'm very skeptical. But what they mean is that a talent is a gift we are born with. You cannot help having it. You're a great athlete or you're not. You're a great singer, you're not. You're a great academic, you're not. And so on. Now, even then, you're not guaranteed success, but a talent is a gift you're born with. Where I challenge, I think there are degrees of talent. I think there are people who are good enough to be right at the top, and other people who have slightly less, so they're a league down and a league down and so on. So I believe there are leagues of talent. But if I was looking at myself, I would say I do not have a talent. So if this includes you, if I was to ask everybody in this room here today, what is your talent? I'll get all sorts of answers. But the question is it actually a talent? Or is it something else? And does that mean if you haven't got a talent, you can never, ever be really, truly successful? Well, the answer to that is a huge, resounding no. Now, I know it's a cliched name and you'll hear it mentioned all the time, but Richard Branson, for example, says he does not have a talent. Elon Musk, for example, says openly, I don't have a talent. But what both of these people have said, that they learned how to run a business. Now, you notice there what they've said, they learned. Now, what they're talking about is this incredible thing called ability. Ability is something you learn how to do. You're not born a plumber, you learn how to become one. You're not born a doctor or a lecturer, you learn how to become one. You're not born a hairdresser, you learn how to become one. Now, what that does all of a sudden, that makes it a level playing field. That means that everybody watching this today can develop something and become really, really good at it and be hugely, hugely successful. That's the level playing field. Now, I have it said to me in the past, well, that's all right, you're standing up there and you're telling us this, but what's your experience? I lectured for 22 years and I needed to do something different. I needed to step outside my comfort zone. I honestly believed I was become institutionalized. So I thought, what could I do that would make me stand out from the crowd? And at this stage, I could find nothing, no business ideas. And then I discovered there wasn't one man, not one male, doing image consultancy in all of the UK or Ireland. And I thought, well, I could do that. I enjoy fashion. So I saved up my money and I went to London and I trained as an image consultant. Now wait for this. I trained for 1 whole week. And I came back to Northern Ireland with this piece of paper saying Billy Dixon is an image consultant. Honestly, I hadn't a clue. I was totally all at sea. I didn't even know what size 10 meant, and yet I was supposed to be dressing women. Makeup is an unmitigated disaster. And in the days before Google, this was 1996, I got books out and I read and I practiced and I read and I practiced. I reached the stage where I felt I could charge for this. And so therefore, I started entering competitions. And to cut a long story short, I ended up in New York and won the world championship as a makeup artist and as a stylist. And since I put makeup and clothes on some of the most famous people in the world. Now, excuse me, this is not me blowing my own trumpet. What I'm trying to say to you is I don't have a talent for that. That's ability and hard work and bloody mindedness. So if I can do something like that, and I come from an ultra macho background, what's to stop you? What's to stop you going out there, learning how to do something and become brilliant at it? And the interesting thing is, if you are trying to and want to reach somewhere, you will have to do things you don't like doing. Let's be frank about that. But you have to do those to get where you have to get to. And that's fine. But ability, and even people with talent need ability. I mean, I know one young guy, years ago I was working with him, athletically he was big, he was strong, he was fast, perfect for rugby. So he had the talent, but he then has to add the ability. He has to learn how to pass the ball, he has to learn how to ruck, how to scrummage. He has to learn the rules of rugby. So those things are the ability attached to talent. So everyone who's watching this has now no excuse for going out there and being successful. And it depends on one thing. And that one thing is my favorite word in the English language. I love this word. It's a word, it's called passion. And passion is that thing inside that when it gets into your gut, it burns you up, it makes you motivated, you go through walls because of it. Passion is absolutely key to your success. I once was asked to mentor this young woman. Her family were third-generation barristers. And she was over in London studying to go to the bar. And they asked me would I go over and mentor. mentor her. So I arrived at her apartment expecting this tall, strong woman. In fact, what I got was this 5'1" young girl with a massive beehive. And when she opened the door, she went, "Hello." We sat down and I started the mentoring, and I talked about passion. And whenever I mentioned the word passion, she just started to cry, and there was scars running down her face. And I'm thinking, what have I done wrong here? And I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "I hate what I'm doing." And I said, "But why are you doing it?" "My parents told me I had to. My teachers told me I had to. There's been so much money spent on me, I feel obliged to do it." I says, "But what are you really interested in?" And she says, fashion design." And I says, "Well, have you done any?" She ran upstairs and she brought down this amazing portfolio. I'd never seen anything like it. And in those days, I had the contacts and I rang a few people. Today, she's the top designer for Yves Saint Laurent. Do you think she's happy? Yes. You know why? Because she's following her passion. Now, this is key to you. You see, if you haven't got a passion for something, you cannot have purpose in life. Now, this is something you may never, ever have thought of before. But think about this. Think of people that you know who drift through life aimlessly. Why? They've no passion, no purpose. Now, there are two types of passion, and I want you to think about this. And let's be frank, the majority of us don't think about this here. So this is not a criticism, but think or even write down. Number one, what are your love passions? At this moment in time, what do you love with passion? Now, it can be anything. It could be cats, dogs, it could be baked beans. I don't care what it is, but what is it you love with passion? And the interesting thing is these change as you go throughout life. In the people that I work with, some will be passionate about football. I do a lot of work in sport, and they're passionate about their sport. Other people are passionate about their business. Some people are passionate about the environment. Some people are passionate about fashion, and it could go on. But what are your love passions? Hugely important to know these. So that's the first one. And if you do get a chance, write those down. Start thinking about them if you haven't. Number two, and this is a word people hate me using, and I've used it already, hate passion. What do you hate with passion? I know it's a strong word, but if you think about it, Hitler united the German nation in the 1930s using hate. So hate is a massive motivator. I hate human trafficking. I hate sectarianism. I hate racism. I hate inequality of any kind. So those are hates. Those are massive motivators for me. So what do you hate with passion? Because once you understand that, and you have your love passions and your hate passions, which do change throughout life, you'll now find that you will start to have purpose in life. And purpose in life gives you that direction that you need to be going in. Now, of course, that's all fine and good. But what if you are in a situation and it's a new situation? How do you fake confidence? Or can confidence be actually faked until you feel it? The answer to that is a resounding yes. You can fake confidence. And before you fake it, there are certain things you do, and we'll give you a little toolkit to take away with you. Before you actually fake confidence, you have to learn to control your nerves. I think that's hugely important. We all get nervous. And nerves, if used properly, can be a real advantage to you as opposed to a disadvantage. But you must learn to control them. And how you control nerves really is the starting point for faking confidence. Well, there's a good question. Oh yeah, sorry, it's away again. Anyway, controlling nerves. What actually happens is all physiological. When you're nervous, there are certain physiological things happen to you. And the first of these is you clench your teeth. And the reason for that is if you're hit during a conflict, you don't get your jaw broken. That's why we do that. The second thing is we shallow breathe. We think we're breathing, but actually what we're doing, we're going, you see a lot of people doing that when they're nervous, but actually by breathing like that, they're only taking the air down into the first third of their lungs. 2/3 of the lung capacity is not being used. And if you think about this, every breath you take, 1/3 of it goes straight to your brain. 1/3 of the oxygen into your intake goes to your brain. That's why it is so important to be breathing properly. So let's go through these. Let's deal with the breathing first. First thing to all get in control is your breath. And where you should be breathing from, and if you want to try this, just put your hands on your diaphragm, just on your belly, and breathe just as easy as and natural as possible, so that your tummy goes in and out rather than your chest. Now, if you ever watch a child lying sleeping at night, you'll never see his little chest rising and falling. You'll see his tummy rising and falling because a child breathes perfectly. And that means when a child cries in the middle of the night, you can hear that cry right throughout the house. Why? Because it's breathing properly and it allows it to project that cry. Whereas if you breathe into the top portion of your lungs, you can't project your voice. Your voice is all tinny and away back here somewhere. So breathing into the diaphragm. And this is why you will find singers and actors, they will do vocal exercises, breathing exercises before they go on, and they'll do that. I was once working with one of the Australian Olympic teams, and one of the things that the coaches taught them to do was breathing. And the way they did it, put one hand on their tummy, another hand on their chest, and like a wave. So they're taken into the stomach first, and then into the chest. So it becomes like a wave. So it's a wave breath, they called it. So first one, control your breath. Now let's deal with the jaw because this is a massive part. As I said, you clench your jaw. And once you clench your jaw, you tighten the muscles around your neck and down into your chest, which means all the muscles around your vocal cords are tightened, which makes your voice go up like that. They're really squeaky. And if you ever think about when you've had arguments with your beloved or having an argument with your family, have you noticed how your voice goes way up, pitches away? I can't do it because I have no voice today, really. Right? So what we have to learn to do is to loosen the jaw. So all I want you to do is very subtly, just relax your jaw. Now, the next thing I need you to do, because you've been clenching your teeth, your tongue has got shorter because it doesn't want to get off. Now, because you have a shortened tongue, that will make you speak faster, which is when people are nervous, they talk really fast because the tongue is shorter. So not only do you loosen your jaw, you touch your tongue off the back of your front teeth and let it fall. And that's how you set yourself up to control your nerves. Now, if you don't believe all of this here, take a look at the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks. They do the haka. Now, the haka is a warrior's dance meant to intimidate opposition. But what it also puts in there, very subtly, have you noticed they do this here? Why? Well, before it was used in rugby, these were warriors going into battle to kill or be killed. So therefore, your body had to be functioning perfectly. By keeping here loose, you keep the chest loose, you keep the arms loose, which means when everything kicks off, your body's right. It's not tight and restrained. Watch the top sprinters in the world. The Olympics will be hopefully coming up this year. Watch the top sprinters sprinting down the track. The good ones, the jaws will be flopping everywhere. Why? Keep this loose, the body stays relaxed and loose. So that is how you control nerves. The other thing they put in the haka, of course, is they slap themselves. Why? Because that keeps the brain and the mind connected. A little bit of pain connects the body and the brain. Politicians I've worked with in the past have been giving speeches, And sometimes they'll have a blank, just things go blank. Golfers have also worked with them where they freeze before they do the putt. And the way you have to get the body and the brain connected again is maybe pinch yourself at the back of the leg. One politician I worked with, he had put his hand in his pocket and he pinched his own leg. Tony Blair, if you remember him, the former Prime Minister, used to do this with his nail, his little finger. That little bit of pain connects the body and the brain. So if you're sitting for a job interview, for example, and you forget something, just a little bit of pain. And that connects the body and the brain. So it's jaw, tongue, breath, and then if you have to use that. So that's how you control nerves. So therefore, when you have that bit done, and you're walking into that room for that interview, or you're walking into a networking event, and you want to appear confident, how can you fake confidence, even inside, if you're really nervous and you don't feel it? Well, set yourself up first. Because the very first thing that people notice about you is not what you're wearing, it's your posture. It's a primitive instinct. The very first thing one human being notices about another will be their posture. Because we're deciding, is this person a threat to my life or not? Because posture will show you that. So when you're walking in anywhere, just remember, shoulders are relaxed, but back and head is up. It's that simple. When you're doing something like this here online, and you're saying, how often have you seen so many people, they're doing like this, or they're looking up their nose, but their posture is terrible. Okay, so posture is number one. So when you're nervous, get your posture right. Number two, walk with purpose. Fellas, no hands in pockets, and girls, no folding arms. Because both of those things say submissive. Because once you put your hands in your pockets, you say, I'm not going to attack or defend. Once you fold your arms, I'm not going to attack or defend. So no hands in pockets. And walk with purpose, lift your feet, and keep your head up. Third one is massively, massively important. You'll be judged by this one, and that is eye contact. And especially in this era when we have to wear masks, eye contact becomes even more important. Eye contact says confidence. It's also acknowledgement. What you're saying to the other person, I'm acknowledging your existence, which is a prime need. We all need to feel acknowledged. So make eye contact with everybody in that panel if it's an interview panel. Fourth one, the humble smile. A smile says confidence. And if you notice, a lot of politicians have been coached to smile when they're in public. Why? Because it says confidence. I'm relaxed. Now, it doesn't mean you have to walk around like the village idiot with a permanent smile on your face. But what it means is you smile from within. And what that does, that makes it come out in the face, so the face looks nice and relaxed and doesn't look tense. The next one, tone of voice. This is an amazing one. Because tone of voice can say bored, or it can say enthusiastic. It also means if you speak in a mundane voice, nobody hears anything. But if you emphasize and can change the tone of your voice, people tune in. It sounds more confident. And when it comes back again, if it ever does, handshake should be firm but not crushing. Those are things that everybody watching this here can do today to make you appear more confident. So it's posture, walk, eye contact, inner smile, tone of voice, and if it comes back, a firm handshake. Okay, now that's fine to there, and that's you faking confidence. But there comes a stage when you have to look someone in the eye and communicate. There comes a stage when you will have to network. There comes a stage when you will have to stand up and do a presentation. I don't know about you, but the one thing I always struggled with, especially as a younger man, was small talk. Talking to strangers. I was extremely shy. I'd have been the person standing up against the wall, making sure nobody would see me and say nothing. So how can you communicate and come across as being confident? Well, let me tell you something. One of the things you don't want to do is talk too much. If you start talking too much, and so many people do this, all you hear is them talking about themselves, and what they have done and what they can do and all the rest of it. And what that does, that switches other people off. It loses impact, and at the very worst, can make you look extremely stupid. So you have to be very careful in how you communicate with other people. And it all comes down to very basic psychology. And it's something that surprises me considerably. I mean, I met two people at the weekend, extremely well educated. Do you know what they did? They talked about themselves for half an hour. I left and they still hadn't asked me one single thing about myself. No one. And you think these are the sorts of people who should know better. You see, you and I are interested in one thing. We are interested in ourselves and ours. Now that is basic psychology. That is what people are most interested in. Ourselves and ours. Now if you know that the stranger that you're meeting, or the person you're meeting, or even your friend is most interested in themselves and theirs, that's what you should be talking to those people about, them. It is that simple. You should be taking yourself off stage and putting the spotlight on other people. This is what the great communicators in the world have always been doing. This is what makes people appear to be more trustworthy. This will make people like you quicker. So that means that when you're talking to people in the future, you need to be reducing the words. Now you notice I say reduce. I do not say stop using. But you need to reduce the words I, me, my, and mine. Let me repeat those. You need to reduce the words I, me, my, and mine. And you need to increase the words you and yours. It seems simple, but that is profound. That is the central hub of all good communication. And you'll see whenever we're talking about presentations in a little while, that theme carries right over. It is so, so important. I was working for a Premiership football team years ago called Fulham. We were playing the team that I supported, Manchester United. And after the game, what I had to do was to go up to the director's box and meet the sponsors. But whenever I arrived, I saw one of Manchester United's greatest players, Sir Bobby Charlton. I thought, I have to get talking to this great man. And I watched for an hour, and he went round everybody in that room. And he talked to maybe one person or maybe a group of people. But what I noticed was he was just nodding, because people were talking at him, not with him. They were telling Bobby Charlton how great they were. They were telling him what they did. They were saying if he could do an introduction for them, they could help Manchester United. He gave them 5 minutes each. He then went over to get some food, and I went over beside him, and I said, what do you think of the cake? He says, it's amazing. He says, this food is amazing. Where does it all come from? I says, it's all brought in from Harrods. I says, what do you think of the match today? And he relaxed immediately and he smiled. He says, I think we've done enough to get into Europe next year. I then asked him who was the most important player in Manchester United, and he told me. I says, well, you're still involved with the club? Oh, yes, I'm their international ambassador. And I says, well, what does that entail? He told me what he does and all the countries that he was going to see and the people that he was going to meet, and he was going to spend time with Pelly and stay with them for a few nights. He told me about the youth academy he had set up in the Midlands. And 1 hour later, I'm still talking to Bobby Charlton. I still haven't said anything about Billy Dixon. He says, oh, by the way, Billy, what do you do here? I says, well, I work with the sponsors and I motivate the team. He says, really? Can I have a business card? Which is how I got that job. Now, if I went in there all guns blazing, telling them how great I thought I was, I'd have got 5 minutes. Now, that's hugely important. So take yourself off stage and put the spotlight on other people. Now, this also carries over, because one of the things that everybody here is going to have to do is network. So learn to do this now. Practice it. Practice it when it's not important. Practice it if you're out at a club. Practice it if you're out in a pub. Practice it even if you're out trying to chat somebody up. Use these principles, because the nice thing is they work. That's the lovely thing about it. And yet networking, I always find networking uncomfortable, unnatural, and extremely difficult. In the early days, whenever I first started this business, I would have gone to an event, big events, and the first thing, I'd have walked in through the door and went and clung to the wall, and then looked out for some other poor lonely creature that was hanging around looking as lost as I was. And then the two of us would just stay together the rest of the night. My networking, nothing. Nothing happened. So, number one, when you walk in through a door, pause. Just pause for a second or two in the door and look around you. Now, this does two things. That pause in the doorway frames you, so therefore makes you look more impressive. This is what the politicians do, by the way. If you look at the top politicians, when they come to a door where they stop in the middle of the doorway and they look around and they smile or whatever, and that doorway frames them and makes them look more impressive. But it also gives you time to think and time to relax. Have a smile on your face and look around. Do not cling to the wall. What I would suggest is you take a couple of steps in and just look around you, but check out people's feet. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous that you check people's feet. I once did a documentary for the BBC on the body language of love. It was hilarious, right? And one of the things when people fancy each other, they point their feet to each other. Don't know if you realize that. So next time you're out with your partner, if their feet are pointing to somebody else, I just dump them, right? But the other reason people will point their feet to each other is if they're in serious conversation. So if I go to a network meeting, I would check everybody's feet. And if I see people with their feet pointing to each other, I know they're the people I can't go near, because if I was to interrupt them, they will only resent my interruption. So networking is not going to work there. So I look for groups or people whose feet are in a neutral position, because they're actually subconsciously inviting other people in. I hope that makes sense. Sounds daft, but you know what? It works. So when I go up to these people, it's then very simple. It's good morning, good afternoon, or maybe perhaps even better is, do you mind if I join you? I find that one brilliant. Who's going to refuse you? Do you mind if I join you? And then you have three things to say. I am Billy Dixon from whatever the company is and my position is. Those are the three things have to be in that introduction. You don't want some long introduction, because people in a networking opportunity need to know who it is they're talking to, what position do they hold, and who is the company, to see if this person is of value to their networking opportunities. So just three things: your name, your position, and the company you work for. And then you say, and you are? And that starts it. And then what you do, you take yourself off stage and you the spotlight on them. You get them talking about their business and what they do. And by listening, because the danger is, well, I mean, I've made all the mistakes. I used to go to networking events, straight in, do all of that there, and then I made a fundamental mistake. I tell them about my business. No, don't tell them about your business until you hear about theirs. And then you can turn around and say, well, you know what? You see that part there? I could really help you with that bit. So by listening to other people, you will spot opportunities that you could help them with your business. Okay. Now, of course, in a situation like this, there are things that you can say and things that you cannot say. There are small talk no-nos. And I mean, if I was with you live at the minute, what I would be doing, I'd be getting everybody to write down what you should never talk about. And I think it's common sense. And if you think about everything I've talked about, hopefully to now, is common sense anyway. But here are the subjects that are taboo. Politics and religion. I think you would agree with that. Money. I one time had one guy asking me what tax band I was in. In other words, he was trying to figure out what I was earning. Controversial subjects. You may have strong views on whatever the controversial subjects are, but please don't air those views with people that you don't know. Keep your views to yourself. And one thing never to get involved in is gossip. I give you a great example of this. I was working in the Dáil, and I was working with the personal advisor to the Taoiseach. And at the end of the day, the two of us were in the bar and we're having a drink. This TD came up to us. He says, "Hello there, fellas. Do you mind if I buy you a drink?" So this, "Please do." Tom says, "Yeah." So we're all three of us now standing, having a chat. And in the middle of the conversation, the TD turns around and he says, "By the way, fellas, do you see that blonde thing down there?" Those are your exact words. He says, "She's having an affair with that minister, you know." And Tom says, "Do you realize that blonde thing down there is my wife?" And your man went, "Oh, for sake." He put his head in his hands. That was his political career decided at that moment in time. Why? Because he got involved in gossip. So keep gossip out. Please, the other ones, do not give details of your personal life. That's totally inappropriate. And if you are in a particular sector, IT, for example, I mean, I meet a lot of IT people and they talk to me and I haven't a clue what they're talking about. They're assuming knowledge. Now, one of the things I was taught whenever I did my teacher training, the one thing I was taught, and it has stuck to me ever since, never assume knowledge. Please do not assume knowledge. People who are talking to me from the IT sector assume I know these things. I don't know these things. And you can alienate a person with jargon. So use plain, simple English. And then please do not use cliches. You know, the management speak that we hear all the time. Today, we're going to pick some low-hanging fruit. We're going to push the envelope, think outside the box and square the circle. It's all nonsense. It's horrible stuff. That as soon as I hear that, I go, And then the one I love, because Billy Connolly says the thing that he hates is when people do this here, inverted commas. When people say, He says, if you see anybody doing that there, he says, what you do, you punctuate everything back to them. You go, "Oh, really?" You punctuate a question mark. Or you go, "Oh, as I was going, full stop." So he says, punctuate everything back to them. So those are the things you definitely should not talk about. And you stick to that guidance, you will come across, even though you may not feel it, you will come across in an event like that as someone who has confidence. The next bit I thought was important for yourselves at your stage of your careers. The one thing I will tell you to do is build a legend. Now, I will be talking about this whenever we're covering personal branding, but you need to build your legend. And one of the most effective ways of doing that is being able to give really good presentations. They are crucial. You go to a networking event, you may mix with 2 or 3 or 4 people. You stand up and give a presentation, you could be talking to hundreds. You're reaching far more people doing a presentation than you are in one networking event. So learn to do presentations and give really effective presentations. Now here's the second thing. Excuse me. When you give presentations, you're perceived to be the expert. So if you are trying to develop a career for yourself, learn to do presentations, do really good presentations, and you will find your career will just open up in front of you. They are crucial. Now, when giving presentations, please, please, please stick to certain rules. And there are only 3, funny enough. Rule number 1 is right back to that basic rule of communication. If I stand up and do a presentation and I go, in my opinion, I think, I believe. This, I did the other. My, me, I. The people in the audience are more likely to challenge you and less likely to trust you. That is fact, because we resent people talking about themselves continuously. So the first rule of good presentations is, as far as humanly possible, present in the third party. In other words, you will be saying things like, research has shown, the figures would indicate, Professor so-and-so did. And when you present in the third party as much as possible, people are less likely to challenge you and more likely to trust you. Fact. So there's the first rule. The second rule, and I would suggest that most of you will have heard of this, that people remember in 3s. That when you're presenting, what are your 3 main areas? Now, the interesting thing is there's been loads of experiments conducted with this here, and if you say 4, 5, or 6 things, people don't remember any of them. But if you only have 3 things, that's what people remember most. It's extremely interesting. So what are your 3 main areas? And you may have 20 things you want to cover, but what are your 3 main headings? And then inside of those, you can put all the rest of the stuff. So what are your real 3? Now, the other thing as well that I find really useful is that when you're summarizing a message, if you can summarize the message in 3 words, people never forget it. And if you look at Nike, for example, their advertising slogan for years is just do it, 3 words. You look at the great political campaigns, 3 words. Okay, so that's rule number 2. And the third and final rule, again, I'll revert back to when I was doing my teaching practice, and this bunch of theories are still being replicated today, and it says that there are 3 learning styles. There's the visual communicator, the oral communicator, and the kinesthetic communicator. And I was taught that when you're doing a presentation, you did a little bit of talking for the auditory. You did a little bit of PowerPoint or Blackboard work for the visual. And then you broke people out into workshops for the kinesthetic. That's the way I was taught. All the recent research suggests that people adopt their learning styles according to the situation, according to the environment, according to the speaker. And people do not have a fixed learning style. We have a preference, but we do not have a fixed learning style. And children especially do not have a fixed learning style. Which brings us on to the third rule, that when you are presenting, if you tell a story paints a picture, a story creates emotion, and a story, what's the third one? Uses words. And if you look at the great orators throughout history, what have they all got in common? They all tell stories or parables. All the prophets and all the religions tell stories to get their message across. So tell stories. And if you're really clever, you'll include the audience in the story. Now, what I mean by this, if I was selling you a car and trying to win you over, I'd sit you behind the desk and I said, now, I notice that you've been interested in the brand new Audi S3, the rocket ship. I've taken the liberty to park one at the front door. Now, here are the keys. You just hang on to those. Now, when you go out to see this car, what I want you to do is look at how it's been completely redesigned. By the way, it's been put on a new chassis as well. Been completely redesigned. Got lovely sleek lines to it and very angular things, all for the dynamic airflow. And take a look at the color blue in this one. It makes it stand out from every other car on the road. Now, you've got the keys there. When you walk up to the car, don't worry about pressing any buttons. It will recognize the key fob. Just you pull the handle and the door will open. But it won't open the passenger's door, so you can't be hijacked. You can only open it on the button. Now get into that car, and when you feel the bucket seats coming around you, and get your driving position to the perfect position, then get your steering column in the right position, put on the seat belt, and then push the starting button and listen to the gurgle of that engine with twin turbos. And when you take off, you have to restrain this thing because it will do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. You've bought the car and you haven't even seen it yet. Why? Because I told you a story that would put you in the story. And that's what great orators do. So there is the third and final rule of doing presentations. However, remember there are other things that can switch an audience off. One of the things that I find switches an audience off is when somebody stands up and they try to prove themselves. They talk about their qualifications and all the experience they've had. And what that does, you can see people sitting in the audience and go, you're a pillock. We don't want that. You don't have to prove yourself. The fact that you're standing up there to give a presentation is enough. I find that self-praise will ruin you, where self-deprecation, people will warm to you. Make fun of yourself. People enjoy that. Please do not walk out with a handful of notes. We've all experienced this. You see somebody walking out with notes, and you time how long it takes them to get through one. And you look trying to work out how long it's going to take in total. Please do not start off by saying how long you're going to talk for. Some people say, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to speak for. And people are watching 5 minutes to go, 4 to go. They're tuned into counting you down, but they're not listening to what you say. So say, I'm going to talk for a short time on confidence. Don't let people see the number of slides if you're using PowerPoint in your presentation. How often have we been sitting there and you see the lecturer puts the notes up on the board and you can say, good grief, there are 80 slides. They're going to go through 80 slides today. And straight away, you just switched off. And then never, ever start with a joke. That's the worst thing you can do. Start with a joke. If you're starting a presentation, start it with a hook. A hook is a piece of information that makes people go, oh. I mean, so one of the presentations I did actually in the university, I started off with, I hated school. My first day in primary school, my headmaster took me in and caned me and told me I was scum. And you can see everybody, that gets everybody's attention, right? And then you explain why. Okay, so start with a hook. And if you are using PowerPoint, which I hope you don't, you notice I haven't used PowerPoint here today. But if you are using PowerPoint, keep it really, really simple. Each slide make each slide black and white. Black and white is simple, it's easy to read, straightforward. And I would keep it to 5 points per slide, no more. You know these people who put the slides up and say, now, I know you can't read this, but well, what's it doing up there? Absolutely not, absolutely daft, right? So 5 points. And when you are exposing on PowerPoint, would you please talk first, then expose your point? Because if you put something up on PowerPoint and everybody's reading it up there and you're reading it off that, all you become is a voiceover. Right? That's all you are. You're a voiceover. You're no longer the legend. You're no longer the person at front. So the rule here is very, very simple. Talk first, then show the points. Talk, expose, talk, expose. Now, the way I do it is I bring in 1 point at a time. I don't let anybody see all the points. And here's a little tip. Do you know the way on PowerPoint you can bring your points in from the side, from the top, from the side, you can fire them in. Here's one for you. Bring them in from the top down. You know why? That makes people go, yes. If you bring them in from the side, people go, no. Sounds daft. I don't know if it works, but I do it. One other thing, just to finish off on, when you are going for an interview, and because a lot of interviews, by the way, the reason I put that in, so many interviews today, you have to do a presentation. And it could be only a 5-minute presentation. But those are the rules to follow. Follow those and you'll not go far wrong. Just control your nerves. But when you walk into a room for an interview, when you go through the door, do not turn your back on the panel because you've lost impact. Right? In other words, when you're closing the door, face the panel and close the door. And walk in with a big smile on your face and go, good morning, good afternoon. And when you sit down on the chair, whatever you do not tuck your feet in underneath the chair. Because that says I'm trying to get away. Always check, and they will pick that up subconsciously. So what we do, if you look at most people when they're out and about in cafes or restaurants, you see that their feet are tucked in underneath the chair. That allows them to get away quickly if they were attacked. That's why we do it. It's a survival instinct. So when you're sitting, always check that you can see your toes over your knees. After that, sit whatever way is comfortable for you. And that's the only piece of body language you need to know for an interview. Now, I hope this has been of some use because we have reached an end to this. And what I've tried to do today is to go through things that are actually practical to you to help you with confidence. First of all, you don't need talent. You need ability. And that ability is something every single one of us can work on. It is dependent on passion. So whatever it is you do in your life, please be passionate about it. So that's the first section. Just be passionate and get that purpose in your life that'll drive you. Second part was faking confidence. And that was controlling your nerves, your breath, your jaw, your tongue. And then faking confidence with your posture, your walk, your eye contact, your smile, and your handshake. And then we went on to how to network effectively, using those principles when you walk into a room and how to communicate effectively, taking yourself off stage and putting the spotlight on the other person. And remember, Reduce the words, practice this at home, reduce I, me, mine, and increase you and yours. And finally, when you're doing presentations, follow those 3 simple rules. I hope that's been of some use to you, and most of all, I hope it's been practical as well. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Billy, that has been absolutely amazing. I have been with you before, and I have written so many things down on this page to remember to go back on my radar. I know there were a couple of questions there in the chat box. Kathy, I think you want to come in with a couple of the student questions.
Yes, there was a very interesting one from Frederick. So when you were talking about earlier on about passion, Billy, you know, about following your passion, remember particularly that poor barrister to be in London. And Frederick was saying, you know, the difficulty of breaking away from family perhaps expectations, you know, going against their passion and going for your passion. He just was sort of wondering, how can one talk, you know, people who want them in one area of life, you know, how can you talk them around a little bit?
Well, the answer to this that is you probably won't, if I've been honest about it. And I've seen so many, in my teaching years, I've seen so many young people curtailed by their families, sadly, and have just lived, I mean, I've met them since, and they're living a very unhappy life. You just have to make the break, is the bottom line. You just have to follow your own road and your own passion. And I know that can be, it's easier said than done, and especially if you're a close family, but it has to be done. It has to be done. I mean, I was told with my family, you must not leave teaching. And I followed my own road, and my family thought I was absolutely mad. But as subsequently, whenever I started to become successful, then they changed their attitude. Isn't that strange?
Yeah, it certainly is very, very interesting what you say, and you've given a lot of top interview tips there to the students who have been joining us today. And I know that watching the position of people's feet will be very high on everybody's radar, and absolutely so many takeaways. So Billy, it has been an absolute delight to have you with us today again. And for the students who are left in the room, I was going to share another slide. It's just not coming up for me here right now, but please go back to the Future Skills Week website there. There are a lot of other sessions that you may be interested in. Billy is up again with projection, personal projection with your personal brand. If you come across that, please feel free to pop in there. A few other ones there. Wednesday we have Tori Abrams, who is going to talk to us about kicking off our career in the new world, and a very, very interesting guy. And of course on Thursday we have the senior ladies football team, who have had such an amazing success reaching the Euro 2020 championships, and you will be totally inspired by their story. So guys, for those of you who are left, thank you so much for joining us. Billy, again, massive thank you to you, and we will see you in the next session this afternoon, and we look forward again to seeing you for the rest of the week. Thank you, Billy. Bye bye everyone, and we hope to see you very soon at some of our other sessions. Thanks a lot.
Excellent.
Guys.
Bye.
Great to see you again, Billy.
And you, Kathy. How are you?
I'm grand. As I say, I missed you on the peninsula.
Yeah, well, we had to leave the house. Just you couldn't have lived in it anymore, Kathy. So we bought a house in Bangor. Unfortunately, because we loved the area.
I know, it was a bit special, wasn't it? And your
It was.
photography, you know, teaching yourself photography like that. The Kearney village, we're taking